the King James Virgin, where each and every week Nick's friends Alan and me recount Bible stories from our childhood to him. He's never heard them before. My name is Adam. So this week is a little different. We were having a hard time finding a time when all of us could record, and Alan came up with this idea of recording an episode in the car on the way to Home Depot. I did my best to clean up the audio, but you can definitely still tell that it was recorded in a car. Also, we realized we've never really addressed it. We're following rigorous COVID precautions. As we've mentioned in passing, Alan is married to my sister, and they live in sort of a compound with my parents. We chose, at the beginning of the pandemic, to all quarantine together, along with Nick and Evie. And we've not broken that quarantine pod. As cases in the U.S. are ramping up, please wear a mask and maintain a 6-foot social distance in public. Anyway, that's the only reason Al and I are in the same car for this recording. Stay safe out there, and I hope you enjoy this car episode of the King James Virgin. We thought we'd kind of do, in conjunction with the political podcast we've been doing, we thought we might talk about how it impacted kind of church internally.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think of something that I could do that didn't require, me holding a Bible or a bunch of notes in my hands.
Right.
And the joke of our podcast and my rant is I never want this podcast to be about we wore jeans in church. Isn't that weird?
Right.
Which I literally texted to Adam and Nick maybe a week ago that I didn't want our podcast to become that. But because that's just stuck in my head.
That's all you're thinking about now?
Well, I was just kind of thinking about it, and then it popped into my head that we didn't always wear jeans in church. When I was a kid, we didn't. And so I wanted to talk to Adam why we think that happened.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an interesting, because I wouldn't say I can pinpoint a date, but I can pinpoint like a I don't know what, 4 or 5 year trend. And
I'm curious if your experience lines up with mine, and it has in the past.
Right.
So when I was really, really little, even as kids, it was like I frequently wore a suit jacket.
Yes. Yeah, we had, my dad would wear full suits like this.
Bad brown or gray,
right?
Or black suits.
My dad's an optometrist, and so
as is mine,
right? Which is a weird.
Coincidentally,
it's not. I was gonna say that's not how we met. It's not how. Whatever, doesn't matter. But the same suits my dad would wear to work were the suits that he'd wear to church. Maybe on Christmas he'd wear like a sweater instead of a suit jacket.
Oh, interesting.
But that's about the range of.
And so as kids, we were tiny adults, so we wore suits or
dress pants,
at least like a button-up shirt, probably a tie.
Yep.
A
clip-on.
Tucked in, a clip-on, of course.
Oh no, I remember getting to wear
suspenders.
Having my dad tie my tie for the first time was a big fucking deal.
I do appreciate that I'm good at tying a tie because I grew up doing it. But
although both of us have an affinity for bow ties, which we did not learn at home. That was something we YouTubed.
Neither do either of our dads know how to tie a bow tie.
No.
But then there was a point where, and I'm sure it pissed our dads off, where the dress shirt became untucked, but it was still slacks.
And that's yes. For us, you're being for
for us, yes.
For youths.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. No, definitely untucked. I never did. A lot of my friends went to. That was at the same time they went to cargo pants. It was cargo pants and untucked dress shirts,
but khaki.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, khaki. Khakis were the nice ones, but my mom was always trying to get me into Dockers at that time.
Okay.
This is a weird fucking. This is weird stuff that I don't think I'd ever have talked about, but was that a thing? The discussion about going from, I remember having conversations about whether pleats were still in or not.
I remember. Yes, not in the context of church.
Okay.
If pleats were more holy.
Well, because the only time I'd wear dress, I wasn't wearing dress pants to school.
That is a hilarious conversation, though. It sounds like a bad Christian knockoff Key and Peele about if pleats are more holy than flat front.
And it wasn't, so in our context, it wasn't a holy thing, but it was the same way that my mom would have conversations with me before going like back to school shopping about clothes for back to school, we would have like church wear. Like, what am I like? Are you going to get Dockers this year?
Sure, you'd be stocking up on your back to school stuff and a specific church outfit.
Right, and probably shoes, dress shoes.
Okay, I get that. Yeah.
And I had atrocious fashion sense, as most
it's not fair.
middle school teens.
Yeah, it was the mid-90s. It was just not a fair time for fashion.
Do you remember the very short-lived banded collar dress shirt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we just looked like a Wild West clergy.
My dad was all
He still wears them.
Yeah, loves the banded collar.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fine on him.
It does.
For us, the big trend was khaki pants, obviously, a braided belt.
Yep.
And like a dark royal blue button-up dress shirt.
By the way, braided belt that was too long that you would tie in a weird knot that would dangle straight down.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
But the blue dress shirt was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why, but we all had that like royal blue dress shirt. Anyway, we're going too deep into this tangent. Although I should say, again, to mention my little brother, I'm a bit older than him. And so for some reason, it was sometimes my job to get him dressed and ready for church, which I'm sure he doesn't remember. But because he was very young in the mid 90s,
right.
It was all sailor outfits with like white tights.
Is this why he like joined the Navy?
And then he was recently, Brian, correct me, but I think he was a seaman, not a sailor.
I mean, I hope so.
I don't know if they're hand in hand, but anyway, that was the thing. That was my job to get him dressed.
Okay.
Which seems like a lot of pressure for a 9-year-old.
Yes. I mean, you have a hard enough time getting yourself dressed.
I didn't hate it though, so maybe they were right on that. So as I was transitioning to the untucked blue dress shirt, my little brother was in tights and a sailor outfit.
Man.
Which is where I want to bring in the side thing that I think was happening at the same time. So the church we were raised in, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as we've discussed before, was very anti-war, anti-gun, anti-politics in church. Like hugely anti-politics, big supporters of separation of church and state.
Yes, and I mean historically abolitionist, historically, that's a great way. But like, the separation of church and state. The overarching term, I believe, was religious liberty.
Sure.
It's a tenet.
And something happened in the 90s, post Reagan, where
was the first time
it wasn't. It's obviously not causated, but it possibly is correlated, where this whole thing with the youth deciding to not tuck our shirts in, wear ties, and the elder people in the church kind of like just being okay with it. I feel like our religion also started creeping towards just standard evangelical or like religion where all of a sudden like church members went hunting.
Right.
And
or it became
okay.
I was gonna say, I wonder if it just became public knowledge. You know, like it was a thing that like families did, but they didn't talk about in the same way that like at the same time, which is kind of a weird thing, like people started drinking coffee, like people had always drank coffee, but they like suddenly started talking about drinking coffee.
In a weird way where the church was being a little more accepting of, people's dress and their personal habits. It lost a bit of the identity that I think made it kind of its own religion.
Yes, I would definitely say it moved a little bit away from its separatist ideals. I mean, what's funny, I don't know if I remember the first time somebody I knew, like their elder sibling, joined the military out of high school. And it was a huge deal because Adventists, historically, like if you're a good Adventist, you were a conscientious objector. You would go in like,
if you had to join,
right? If you were drafted, and typically it was good form to not enlist. You were drafted. The only time you went to war is because you had to, and if you did, you were not going to carry arms. You were going to be a medic or some other non-combatant.
Which we've discussed that Adam's war hero grandfather and initially went in as a conscientious objector, but didn't want to miss a day of training so he could help people. And so he actually did carry a sidearm, which he was ashamed to until the day he dies.
Right.
He had to carry a sidearm.
The only way that came out is because somebody approached him about doing a documentary.
On conscience.
And none of us knew that he actually was not officially registered as one because of, he didn't want to take Sabbath off, essentially.
So that's how big of a deal it was.
Yes.
That shame like weighed on him forever.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing that happened in the 90s where, untucked shirts became okay, coffee became okay.
Praise music began to become
Guitars
more...
crept onto the stage. We're still a ways away from drums and blue jeans.
Right.
But like they're on the horizon. And I don't know what that was culturally. Maybe Bill Clinton, who knows?
Right. Oh God, I remember that it was,
But that was another thing, the church hated Bill Clinton.
Yes. Well, so again,
I think we're just maybe coming off Republican presidents, and so they didn't talk about it ever.
I also I have a bit of a bubble in that I grew up in the San Juan Islands, which are just hippie central. And so I think my church was probably more split.
Interesting.
Because I remember post potluck, my mom does not ruffle feathers, but she got very into it with a couple of church members on you're not accurately representing the left sort of argument.
Weird. I would love to see your mom do that.
It was very awkward. Her going, well, I'm not sure I don't know. I think that's inaccurately stating what they're trying to, it was that kind of a vibe. My mom is very, calming the waters type presence.
Sure.
And anyway, it was my dad on the other hand, is making waves on purpose.
Well, he would have been a pretty hardline Republican still at that point.
Yes, correct.
Which I should mention, he's done a complete 180 on that, and there could not be a bigger fan of Obama.
No, my dad is very much a traditional Democrat at this point.
He stands Obama.
Very much so.
To the point where he...
although maybe more Pete Souza.
That's what I was just going to say. Where he follows Obama's staff.
Yes.
Anyway. So yeah, that weird shift in the 90s, I found... as I was thinking about jeans in church and that stupid cliche, I was thinking of the other things that were changing
politically around
at the same time.
There was a massive cultural shift, and I think there was a massive cultural shift in Christianity in general because you hit the early 2000s and you get so late 90s you get the Rich Mullins style kind of ragamuffin hippie Jesus.
Yeah.
Refires, and I think in direct opposition.
Sort of accurate Jesus.
Yeah, and I think it's in a direct opposition to Reagan neoconservative Jesus. That's my
sure. I don't disagree.
My read on it, because you also get I Kiss Dating Goodbye at the same sort of time, and you get Cornerstone.
I Kiss Dating Goodbye. Yeah, that was late 90s.
You get the rise of the massive mega church, Christian culture becomes a separate entity. So you have the rise of Christian recording artists, the rise of, I think the first Christian, quote unquote Christian movies started coming out.
That's true. I hadn't really put together that Christianity had this blossoming moment in the mid 90s with Michael W. Smith and Sandy Patty.
And those are early, and then you hit
that's all it was, and then all of a sudden we had
Relient K.
We had rock and roll groups.
Right, and we joke about it a lot, but what's the Jars of Clay, having mainstream success and then mainstream fall from grace when it's discovered that they're religious.
Yeah, interesting.
Anyway, I wonder if it's all tied to that. There's just a whole soup of things going on.
I kind of imagine there's this eddy or vacuum's not quite the right word, where the religious right pushed so hard and so fast into our cultural. They became a cultural presence, kind of militant almost.
Yes.
That they created this space where Christianity could flourish kind of behind it. So whether or not it was part of that religious right, like Rich Mullins,
right,
or jeans in church, I feel like the people who started the religious right would hate jeans in church.
Right.
But they created this space behind where things could kind of mix up and happen.
I just finished editing the Russell Kirk episode, and I'm thinking that
it very well might just be like personality differences between people who love tradition versus people who hate tradition or are bristle at tradition. And I'm wondering if it's that sort of vacuum, like you get the hardline conservative going, I love tradition and traditional values, but then like a Rich Mullins kind of going, well, I actually don't get doing these rites for tradition's sake. I want to do these rites because they bring me closer to God or whatever the spiritual fulfillment. Cause I mean, like, I don't know if you felt this way, but like the jeans in church became a sign of like humbleness. Like it was we're trying to be an everyman rather than the elite, the cultural elite. Is that?
I mean, I would say that trend was led by the like the rich kids.
Oh, I see.
They dressed more casually first, and like the rich kids can. They can
get away with it.
Afford, air quotes, to dress more casually.
Both afford and afford.
Because they have sway in the church because their parents have money.
That's fair.
So there might be a bit, at least that was my perspective. Like the dentist row along the river waterfront. Like
I see.
Their kids kind of led that. Not that it was a bad thing.
And so I'm thinking about it. I wore dress clothes all the way through high school. It was only when I got to college.
Correct, which is the church Adam and I met running.
Right.
I would agree that was probably my first jeans in church.
And I would wear, so I mean, like there was a progression. What's funny is like my like Dockers and dress shirt got swapped out for my quote unquote nice casual wear.
Like nice jeans and
like my nice button up.
Your vintage Western style button up.
Yeah, like it had way too many patches and
boot cut jeans.
Yes. Yeah, like they were my Joe's jeans.
Yeah, and let's see, what would we have been wearing? Pumas.
So you were Puma boy. I was like.
No, I was like $5 Walmart.
That's true. You
Velcro at the time.
When I met Alan, like you could not. He was like kind of like grunge hippie boy, which is so funny knowing him now, where you're like more clean cut.
Yeah, I think
modern boy. But like I'm trying to think of what I was wearing, like shoe wear at the time. I would have been wearing European sports shoes that were like not Puma or Adidas. It would have been like some like ASOS or some brand that at the time was niche and indie, because that's my entire my identity was other.
I wonder if we should be thinking about this generationally as well.
Oh, for sure.
Where like maybe Gen X was just like, it's too much work to keep up all this artifice. I'm just gonna like lazy boyify my relationship to religion, and like, yeah, I drink coffee. I don't care.
It's really, I mean
maybe
as a Gen X is a weird generation because it does feel like it was, what is the least impact that I have to, like, how can I slip through any sort of potentially awkward situation? And I think you're right. Like they just sort of didn't say, like their rebellion was not ostentatious.
Because our parents were kind of drugged, not kicking and screaming, but like they wore suits and tucked at least, they may have lost their suit jackets.
Right.
But they were definitely not the instigators.
No.
So maybe the instigators were like more of a Gen X, between our boomer parents and us.
I'm trying to remember like all the Gen Xers that I can think of when I was in high school, they were all wearing polos.
Oh,
dudes were.
Is polo the gateway jeans?
I think so. I think it was like polos is the gateway casual wear. I think that kind of covers.
Yeah, I don't know how to wrap this up. I was just thinking of the kind of related political and social things in regards to what Nick's been telling us about.
Yeah, and I think that what I think is interesting is our experience, specifically, like your and my experience of growing up in the church, is all in direct reaction to what we're discussing.
Right.
Like we're not like, we didn't grow up in the 80s where we were being oppressed. We were almost like on the way out of oppression. So like, how like 80s kids will talk about how terrified they were of nuclear war?
Yes.
Like, I don't have that fear, that terror. You know what I mean? Like I don't have that in the back of my mind, but I remember media about it.
Yeah.
And so I think in that same way, like I don't have the existential terror of like conservative. What I have is like weird purity movement shit, and like trying to find what's the balance of casual to fancy. Like that's the shit that
we may need to do another car episode on just I Kiss Dating Goodbye and purity rings.
Yeah.
Although I also kind of want Nick's reaction on that.
I would love to get Nick on that
because it's a lot.
Yes, it is.
And that happened during our sexual development.
Yeah.
And so that just was a lot.
Well, cool. We're here. So this has been whatever these are, car episodes.
This has been car chat. We'll come up with a creative name for this.
I want to call it King James Virgin Nights, but it makes no sense. So bye.
Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. You can follow us at KJVPod on both Twitter and Instagram to keep up with, random social media type things. This week, we'd love it if you'd hit up the prayer hotline with your memories of changes in Christian culture you noticed. Coffee in church for the first time, clothing memories, did you kiss dating goodbye? Record these memories as voice memos and then email them to dearjesus@kingjamesvirgin.com. Thanks to Mascaras and Resurrection Records for the use of our theme song, Kexade, off the album Emerald. And this week's Resurrection Records artist is Obsessions. You can find links to these songs, to the stickers we have for sales, to show notes, all sorts of things on our website, kingjamesvirgin.com. And since Nick isn't here, remember, until next week, none of this is real. Sonic Bazaar.